people don't really think about habits because they're habits, right? So we do so many things. We don't think when we drive how we drive. We don't think when we tie our shoelaces how we do this. We don't think what we do first thing in the morning, right? Or last thing before we go to sleep. But if we sit down and spend the time analyzing our habits, that is really great exercise to understand what we do really well, meaning what we do that's good for us, and what we do that's really not so great for us, that we can then change them. So here's what I suggest. You start thinking about from the time you wake up to time you go to sleep. So, take like 30 minutes, sit down, take a piece of paper, pen ready, sit down in quiet, a spot, make sure nobody bothers you, turn off your cell phone technology and so on, and think about, so what do I do when I wake up? So I hear the alarm. Do I snooze it off? Do I stay a couple more minutes? Do I just get up? Then what's the next thing I do, right? Do I just go take a shower? Do I sit down, watch TV? Do I check my email? Then what do I do next? So as you go through this, then what do I have for breakfast? What time do I eat it? What do I eat for breakfast? Then you just write it down. What's the next thing I do, and so on. So you go through your day, kind of like standard, what do you usually do? And when you do that, you will be surprised how many things that you are going to list that you don't even know that you do, you don't think about it, that are not so great for you, but you're also going to find a lot of things that are good for you, that you want to keep doing. And when you find things that are not so great for you, so let's say one of your habits, and a lot of us do this, and I used to do this, it took me a while to change it. As soon as I wake up, first of all, I do a couple of things, but one of the things I used to do is check my email. And what that does is, at least for me, especially when I check my work email at 5 o'clock in the morning, you'll find something that I have to take care of it, and that will ruin my day. I'm going to start working on it instead of taking this first 30 minutes for myself. So when you find these habits that are destructive for you, you really want to work on changing them. And that's really the reason for this exercise of writing down things that you do throughout the day. So one of the things is what Sean Aker called 20-second rule. And I really love this idea. So let's say you want to start, give me an idea. What habits would you like to start? And let's take a real example. That would be cool. So let's say you want to declutter your office, right? And I actually had the same problem. My office was a mess. Things are all over the place. And the reason we don't do this is because it's going to take us days to clean up, right? And that's why we just keep pushing it off. Our brain goes, well, it's going to take you forever. You don't have a time. Just leave it off. Don't do it. So instead, what you do is you just say, let me spend 20 seconds. Let me spend, in this case, if you're cleaning your office, let me spend 2 minutes. 2 minutes a day. I'm going to pick up one thing and I move it to the place. I'm going to pick up another thing. Boom. I spend 2 minutes. I feel better. Your brain is going to give you a little bit dopamine. So you're going to feel really good about it, so that the next day or the same day in the afternoon, you're going to go, well, you know what, that felt really good. I can spend 20 more seconds or 2 more minutes and move 2 more things. And as you do this, you will feel better because you accomplished your goal. As you feel better, you will get some more dopamine. And that's really one of the coolest things I discovered while doing research on habits. That is that we can release our own dopamine. And that's kind of another secret that's connected with this one, that we can release our own dopamine, almost like dopamine on demand. So in this case, as you do these things and as you move stuff around, your brain goes, well, great job, buddy. Let me give you a little bit of dopamine. You feel better, and that will keep you going. Instead of saying, let me spend all day, because you and I know it just doesn't happen easily, right? So that's really one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is you should really focus on one habit at a time. I know I used to, some of us can. I used to, put my goal to change 5 habits, and it was difficult. But a lot of people really can't do this. So pick one, list 5 of them, and pick one what's really important for you. I think for most of the people, you have to give it a time. You really have to be ready. And then, one of the other secrets is that, as you start thinking of what habit do I want to change, that means that, well, A, you're not ready to make some changes. And B, as you start thinking of changing the habit, you also must have a huge why. You must have a huge reason. You can't just say, I'm going to start exercising because people say it's good. You can, but the chances are you're not going to start exercising because other people tell you it's good, right? You would start exercising, and I'll give you my example how I started. I kind of went on and off. So I used to go to the gym all the time, then I stopped. Then about 6 years ago, I got a job that was extremely demanding, 24/7, running a global financial for the global financial firm, all the technology for the 24/7 trading, which it was really demanding, and I really didn't have time to do anything. So I stopped, exercising, and then about 2 years into the job, it was just about 4 years ago that I started again. I looked for that big why, and when I started thinking, why do I want to exercise? So I'll feel good. So what, right? I mean, you really. And then I realized how I lost my parents. They were both really young, and I didn't even finish college when they both passed away. And I said to myself, I don't want to do this to my son. He deserves to have me as long as he can. He deserves, his hopefully children and my grandchildren deserve the time to be with me. And that was my big why. So I think finding that reason, finding that big why is a huge part of the changing your habits. So the habit loop, what happens is, this is really interesting because regardless what we do, and we can think of physical habit, emotional thinking, and then I'll spend a minute on circle habits, which is something I think it's very interesting and important that I discovered. But anything that we do, feel, or even think starts with a trigger. Something triggers it. Again, we don't think about it, but something does trigger it. So let's say there is a physical habit. And let's think of brushing our teeth, right? So some of us, what triggers it, as soon as we get up, boom, we brush our teeth. Some other people, just before they leave for work. Other people will do after they watch TV. I don't know what it is, but I guarantee you, if you start thinking about one of your habits, you will find out what triggers it. Another example is, taking a bad example, having a snack, having a cookies. Something triggers it. Maybe it's while you watch TV, you have your cookies in front of you. Maybe it's immediately after dinner. But if it is habit, something triggers it. So that's a trigger. Another example is, let's say you go to a restaurant and you see the big menu and you see the burger there, you see the picture, or you see your colleague orders the hamburger. I apologize for those of listeners who don't eat meat. It's just an example of trigger. And that kind of triggers you to have that burger. So that's a trigger. Then the next thing is the habit. So the next thing is basically what happens. So what happens? You brush your teeth, and then so something triggers it, and the next thing you do it. So you brush your teeth, you eat a burger, you eat a snack, right? And then the third thing is what happens? You feel good about it, right? You get that reward at the end. So the reward is when you brush your teeth at the end, you feel good about it, you smell good, you're kind of ready to go to work. At least that's for me. you have a cookie, you're like, this is really great. I got all the sugar. So it's immediate. What our brain focuses is immediate reward. So it will give you immediate reward. Just like when some people have a hamburger, it will give you that immediate reward. Immediately you feel good. But the problem with this reward is that your brain will give you a reward regardless if it's good for you or bad for you. So an example is eating that big hamburger, right? You will get reward because immediately you'll feel good. However, most of us later on will not feel that good. And we know that, in a long run, if we have too many of these or too many cookies, in a long run, that's not good for us. So we have to think about that the brain focuses on the immediate reward regardless if it's good or bad. And then we need to identify, okay, I can have this burger. I know I'm gonna maybe feel good immediately afterwards. However, in long run, that's not good for me. So we have to think how to trick our brain to only focus on what's a long-term good for us, rather than just short-term. So here's a little secret, and it's really interesting. You can, what happens is when we create a habit, any habits, and this is really, from the, kind of like from the day that we were born all the way until we die. And I can, connect a little bit about neuroplasticity and what happens to the brain. That brain really changes until the day we die. And what it does is it changes based on the things we do. So let's think about changing your habit versus creating a new one. The little secret is that your habit, the neural pathway that your brain creates, that's created in your brain, will never get deleted. It sounds weird, but once you create that neural pathway, and let's say you, okay, let me give you actually a great example, changing your habits. So, I used to drink Diet Coke. So I would go outside in my yard Saturday, go cut the grass, get a little sweaty and tired, come back to the garage, open up the fridge, right on my eye level, there was a Diet Coke, take one and drink it. And I drink a couple while I'm, cutting a lawn and being outside. And I realized that I need to change this habit. Diet Coke is not good for me. But based on the research, I knew that I cannot just easily say, some people can, right? Just cold turkey, no more Diet Coke. But I knew that's not easy thing to do. So now I was working on changing that habit, but leaving most of the habits element the same. So let me give you an example. What does it really mean? Habits element. I am outside, I'm cutting my lawn, I get a little sweaty, and that kind of tiredness and sweatiness and triggers me to have a Diet Coke. What do I do next? I open up the fridge, right? So everything is same to this point. Now what I did is to trick my brain. I pulled out, there was no Diet Coke in the fridge anymore. On the same level, on the same spot, on the same shelf, there was a water. So what happens is I now pick up a water, right? So my routine, that's the next thing, right? Maybe I didn't explain easily. So, clearly last time. So you have this trigger, then you have a routine. So my routine was to drink the Diet Coke. Now I pick up a water. Same trigger. My routine is I also gonna drink something, but I'm drinking water instead. And my reward is I feel really good. I was thirsty, now I'm not anymore. So you see how you can, to change one habit, you can keep certain elements. In my case, I kept the trigger the same, right? So I was tired, sweaty, thirsty. That's my trigger. I go to the garage. I open up the fridge. Everything is the same, right? I pick up a drink. My routine is almost the same. I'm drinking, but I'm drinking water instead of Diet Coke. And my reward is I still feel good about it. So this is how you can change one habit, replace it rather with another habit. So you can replace a bad habit with a good habit by using this example. structuring environment. It's oh my God, that is like awesome. I was last night actually. I'm putting another program based on habits, and I actually called this lecture product placement. And if you think about environment, think about when you go to supermarket. What do they do? Think about how they strategically place every single product to make sure that you buy as much as possible. Think about what do they place next to register so that while you standing in line, you can pick up a couple of snacks or whatever they have, unhealthy foods. So you can do the same thing with your environment. So let's say you want to eat healthier. So what you want to do is you want to prime your environment to be as healthy as possible. Hide or throw away. And in my case, honestly, I do have a little bit of junk foods and it's down in the basement. I mean, I have a pantry room downstairs, but I hide it. So there's a little chocolate that not so good. I hide it downstairs. But the rest, keep it away from your eye level. So when you open up the fridge, on the eye level, you really want to see good food, right? In the kitchen, say in the kitchen, dining room, on the table, you don't want to have cookies. You want to have fruit. So you want to have your environment where everything is going back to this 20 seconds. 20 seconds away from you, the bad stuff, right? And the 20 seconds closer, the good stuff. So that's really what you want to do. You want to prime your environment to help you establish your good, healthy habits. Emotion and thoughts, we don't think of them as habits, but believe it or not, as you said, they are habits also. We a lot of time, unconsciously, subconsciously, we establish these habits. So let me give you one emotion habits that I had. I went through analyzing my habits. I discovered what was going on and I fixed it. So, and it's funny when I said I fixed it, right? We don't really fix emotions, but we can change them. We can change them to feel better. So, I have my reading time from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. is my reading time, and anything that distracts that is just doesn't give me, if I have a less reading time than an hour, it doesn't give me as much pleasure, as much dopamine as I like to get. So at one point I realized that often around 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, I'll just get upset and I have no clue why, but I'm just not as nice to my wife as I used to be. And this happened a couple of times. And she asked me, like, what's going on? And I said, I really don't know. I have no clue. Why am I so, what's going on? Then I started analyzing that habit. It became a habit, unfortunately. So here's what happened. 8 to 9 p.m. is my reading time. But during that, there was a couple of months time frame where we had some issues with another business. And unfortunately, I had to work on this, other business during that time. It would be 9 o'clock, 9:30, I go to bed and I didn't do my reading and I'm upset. Had nothing to do with my partner, but the way I acted was that as if, she did something wrong, which was, and I mean, even if she did, there's no way to no reason to act wrongly, right? So I noticed that any time when something like this happened and I wouldn't have enough of my reading time, 1 hour, that just I would be upset. So I said, okay, now I caught it, I analyzed it, I know what triggered it. What triggered it was this real estate business. My routine was that I would do this business instead of doing my reading, and reward, again, call it reward, but my brain would say, well, now you're really upset. Here's your reward. Here's your immediate reward. Here's your emotions. And so when I caught it, I was able to analyze and to say, hold on, these things will happen. And there is a time that I will not have full hour of reading time. And that is okay because that will override, that is more important at that time. And then I should feel good because I accomplished the goal. So I immediately, after I analyzed and was able to understand what happened, I was able to change my habit. So that's one example of emotional habit. There's another example. 2 days ago, actually, when I look through the window, still a lot of snow outside. I live in New Jersey. But 2 days ago, there was a beautiful, 4 to 6 inches white all the outside when I woke up. And as soon as I look through the window, immediately brings me to thinking habit, brings me back to my home city, Sarajevo, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I grew up. And that's where I spent a lot of time as a kid on the snow, going outside, on a sled, just playing with our friends. And immediately it would bring that thinking habit back to home, which is really, interesting when we start thinking how many of these thinking habits and emotional habits we have when we start analyzing. And Kristen, one more thing I wanted to say, which I don't think you will really find this in any literature. I believe I coined this term, but if somebody else wants to claim that, that's okay too. Something I call circle habits. And I really think that's important. Dr. Dana Marino actually, when she read this, she wrote like a couple of blogs, and she keeps talking to her clients about it. And what I call circle habit is how many times we keep telling ourselves, "Oh, I'm gonna have to clean my basement. Oh, I'm gonna really have to take care of my office and declutter." And we keep telling this to ourselves, right? You keep telling to yourself, "I really need to declutter my office," and then you keep saying, but you do nothing about it. And now, I'm gonna make up a little story. Of course, it doesn't go like this, but your brain goes, "Well, are you gonna spend any time on it or not? If not, I'm not gonna help you either." But you feel bad. Don't you feel bad that you still have that clutter in your office? Unfortunately, seriously, many of us feel bad, and that's not good. Why should we feel bad? So instead, and you go in a circle, right? It's a loop. You just go into the circle. You keep saying, "I have to do it." You don't do it, and then you kind of feel bad that you didn't do it. So instead, any habit that you want to do, you keep telling yourself you want to change the way you eat. You keep telling yourself you have to exercise. You keep telling yourself you have to whatever, right? Instead, you do this. When I wanted 6 years ago to implement again my exercise habits, I realized that I had such a demanding job. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, quickly get ready, go to work. I get late 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock. I'm so tired, I can't do it. So I said, look, forget about keep telling myself I have to exercise. Instead, I'm going to put this off for 3 months. So you put the date, you say, give it 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And you say, for 3 months, I'm not going to think about this at all. Because, for whatever reason, I don't have time, or I just don't want to do this, right? Put it off for 3 months, don't think about it. Come back 3 months later, reevaluate. Can I do this now? Am I ready? Do I have my big why? Do I have my reason? Right? And if you still don't feel like you can do this for any reason, put it off again. Right? Don't just keep asking yourself every day. And then come back and say, okay, that's what I did with exercise. So 2 years, I haven't done almost, no exercise. And I kept feeling bad about it until I discovered this, that was my circle habit. And then that's exactly what happened. When I was ready, it took me 2 years almost. But, I reevaluated every 3 months. And then that's it. Then you say, okay, now I'm ready. Nike, let's just do it. So that's really how you discover and close that loop on a circle habit. We all want to do the right thing, but life happens, right? I mean, when I said life happens, the other day I called, again, with some other business, I had some issues, and I called my attorney, and she's such a great lady, Irene. And, Irene supports my work, and she knows everything that I do. And I go, Irene, even the happiness experts really need some help. I'm like, I really feel bad, and here's what I need, need you to help me. And it's exactly what she said. Life happens. And that's right. Life happens. We can't be, we're not going to be successful at everything all the time, because that's unrealistic. And we're also not going to be happy all the time, because that's unrealistic. We don't want to become robots, right? I mean, that's another thing that some people argue. And actually, some people argue that, just changing all these habits, we don't want everything to become habits. We don't want to become robots. We want to think. We want to be mindful. Habits are good. This brings me to interesting point. I'm sure you know of Dr. Ellen Langer. We call her mother of mindfulness. And so when I finished my book, Habits and Happiness, Dr. Langer was really, she actually received the very first copy of that book for pre-release version. And her and I had discussion. She read it, and she came back to me. She said, it's really a great book. I really enjoyed it, but I have a little problem endorsing it. And I said, of course, just, understand. And she said, the problem is that my entire life I worked on mindfulness, and habits are mindless. So I started thinking about it. I just couldn't, I knew she's right. So then I interviewed her, and we had another discussion. And I said, Dr. Langer, you are right. Habits are mindless. But in order to establish habit, we have to be mindful, right? In order to establish certain habits. Now, there are certain habits that we just do, right? We drive, we know how to, tie shoelaces, we brush our teeth. But if you want to, hey, you want to start exercise, it doesn't just happen. You have to be mindful about, doing exercise. You have to be mindful about, a meditation. I mean, anything. You have to be mindful if you want to eat slower. I think what's really important is that we all have to look at our lives and decide what's important for us. What habit do we really want to implement? That's number one. We should also look at the research. And the research shows that, a lot of things such as journaling and mindfulness and meditation and yoga will improve our well-being. But like I said, that's all good. And some of us, like myself, I love reading research and coming and testing it on my own life. But other people, they just have to look at their life and decide what habit they want to implement. It might have to do something with the happiness. It may not have anything to do with happiness. It may have to do with, I want to become more successful, which means that there are certain habits I need to establish. Get up at 5 o'clock, spend an hour, doing certain things that I don't usually do, and so on. But I think that's really the key. Find a habit that's important for you, find a good why, and you'll implement it. Yeah, happy new habits.